Mr. Tim Draper, welcome to this edition of Life's Tough, but Bitcoin makes it easier.
Well, I think so. I think Bitcoin's going to make it a lot easier. Right now, every time you swipe your credit card, you're paying 2.5% to 4% to the banks. And they're all loving it and living large on your money. But Bitcoin creates a frictionless, open, transparent, and decentralized world. And we're all going to be so much better off with it. So as it's starting to spread, we're all going to be better off. So yeah, life's going to be easier. I mean, think about it. When you are, let's say you're a millennial and you just get out of college and you go, wait, I'm $200,000 worth of debt because of this education that they pushed me through. And they're saying, you know, I think I don't want this isn't my father's Oldsmobile. I don't think I want my father's currency. I think I want something new. And so if you ask somebody sort of less than 35 if they'd rather have one Bitcoin or $8,500, they'd all take the Bitcoin. But if they're over 35, they'll say, I'll take the dollars. And I think this is one of those times where all of a sudden there is a new way to operate. Imagine that, being $200,000 in debt, coming out of school thinking, hey, I'm ready to go, but the schools have taught you ancient Greek and some, you know, classics or whatever, and you're not prepared for any job out there. You're going to be looking for something else. And this is the something else. This is a new technology. It's better than your grandfather's Oldsmobile.
And how did you find it, or did it find you?
Well, I found it, and it found me. There were two different ways. One was I've been looking for digital currency for years and years. In 2002, 2003, I met with a guy from Korea, and he said that he was playing this game, and it was such a big deal in Korea. I think it was called Lineage. It was such a big deal in Korea that he said, I have to hire a guy to be my avatar when I go off to work, because I want to survive in this virtual world as well as surviving in this real world. And it got me thinking that, yeah, there's going to be a virtual world and a real world. And that virtual world is going to have its own real estate and its own currency and its own social stratums and whatever else. And I want to succeed in those. So, and I thought it would all come from the games business.
That's where you saw it initially.
But it didn't really happen there, because nobody could translate, you know, 300 gold bars in one game for, you know, some super currency in another. They didn't figure out how to create that translation.
But it doesn't
seem
seem
like
like
Bitcoin came. All of a sudden, you didn't need the game. It was open and transparent and completely ready for the world, and didn't require any translation. So that was pretty exciting.
And this wasn't the first time that you found something or were an early adopter innovator. I was told a story earlier that you had heard about some rumors about HD TV before most people.
Yeah.
I mean, Tim, this seems to be something
you
that
did
you
some
find.
deep research.
I did.
That was a long time ago.
How did you find out about this stuff, man? Like, how do you do it?
I just follow my nose. I meet a lot of people. I get to meet entrepreneurs. They're all looking 5, 10 years out. Every time I run into a new entrepreneur, I ask them what they do, where they're going, why they care, and then I start to get an understanding of what's going to happen. What's going to happen 5 or 10 years from now. I'm not too good at what's happening right now, but I'm really good on what's going to happen 5 to 10 years from now.
And you have this side. You were a visionary. Michael Loeb, he had said that the people that he looks for to bring onto his team are people that are willing to cut off their arm, like to do what it takes. Like, what do you think when it comes to these amazing entrepreneurial minds?
Let me put it this way. I will not cut off my arm for Michael Loeb, but I am hardworking, and I expect that of entrepreneurs. If you're an entrepreneur, I always ask the question, why are you doing this? You know, you're giving up a steady job, your social environment will all think you're crazy, all these things. And if the entrepreneur sort of says, hey, I'm doing it because, well, I thought it would be interesting, or I heard there was a market or whatever, then I know that's not a true entrepreneur. If the entrepreneur says, because my company said this, and I can't believe they did it all wrong. I talked to my boss, and I told him you got to do this, and he said no, he didn't get it. That's when I know I've got an entrepreneur.
So it's passionate people. You want passionate people because it's contagious.
It's passion around a thing. Everybody's a little passionate about something, right? But it's passionate about something that would be going after a big market and be somewhat unique. It's got to be unique in a marketplace. It can't be like, hey, I'm really passionate about, ride sharing. Yeah, but Uber's been here for 15 years. So, what are you going to do? What's different? What's special about you?
And this side of you, I like to say that, so now today we're finally figuring out this thing called OCD. Now it means obsessive cryptocurrency disorder.
That's OCCD.
That how did people, you knew this was going to become something big. You knew that people were going to talk about it. That my son's gym coach, when I said to him, I'm heading out to California to do some filming for a cryptocurrency documentary, and he said, oh, I hold, that you knew that this was something that was going to catch on. What do you think it is about crypto that is so exciting to people that have been traditional finance world of stocks and bonds?
Well, at first, I was just thinking, yeah, this will be interesting in the virtual world. Like, people will be able to trade it in the virtual world. More and more of our world is going virtual. So the virtual world's becoming closer to our real world now. But the thing that really got me was when the Bitcoin started to take off, and then the Mt. Gox guys, disappeared the money. I don't know what happened to it. Disappeared. So so I thought that was the end of Bitcoin. I thought, well, it's sort of in its nascent stages, and that thing's gone. But then Bitcoin only dropped about 15% on the news that the biggest exchange just basically disappeared their money. Well, I thought, whoa, they really need this. And I thought, well, maybe it's just drug dealers or whatever. And then I found out, I did some deep research, and I realized, oh my gosh, this is how people can pay people overseas. This is how they can remit their money to their families.
You actually saw a use case. This was
many. And the idea of micropayments, that you could actually do micropayments.
And why do micropayments matter? What makes
think
that
about
so
this.
different?
You watch that Star Wars movie, and there's 15 minutes, like 15,000 people were involved in that Star Wars movie. Each of them has to get a check in the mail every quarter from Lucasfilm or Disney or whoever. Well, they get this check in the mail. That check costs Lucasfilm about $7 to send. The checks are for like 25 cents. So it makes no sense. So if everybody had a Bitcoin wallet, they'd just drop a little Bitcoin into each of those wallets. Everybody, first of all, be paid the right amount. Everybody knows that there's a real problem in Hollywood with the accounting. And they'll be paid the right amount, and they know they could actually get it set up so that every time somebody went into the movie theater and paid $20, that $20 would fall into the waterfall exactly the way it's supposed to fall. It's a whole new way of thinking about doing business. I keep thinking in the venture capital business, if I could do a Bitcoin fund, all Bitcoin, and then I fund companies in Bitcoin, and then they pay their employees and suppliers in Bitcoin, then all the accounting would be done. It's all on the blockchain. It's already done. I don't need an auditor, a bookkeeper, an accountant, people who are surrounding the thing, creating weird
You're talking
problems.
about you're disrupting.
This could be really a big deal. But the governments are a little behind it, because I tried to do that. I tried to start funding companies in Bitcoin, and they make you pay a tax on the capital gain from what you bought it for, what you sold it. They're doing it all wrong. They should just do a small transaction tax or something. They should do something that really simplifies the taxing of crypto. And it's a new thing. It's new. It's
Everyone's
exciting.
trying to figure it out.
People, crypto can be a great thing for UBI. Like you could, it's amazing for things like airdrops. Think about you're trying to save all those people in Venezuela from their bad dictator, right? Well, so you do a big airdrop of cryptocurrency there. You do a big Bitcoin airdrop instead of handing the leader a bunch of money that then doesn't
You
quite
don't know
get
where it's
to
going
the people.
Absolutely.
All of a sudden you do an airdrop. All the people have money and they can start operating in Bitcoin instead of working in Venezuelan bolivars. You know, they don't have to use the local currency. They can actually build an economy outside of that bad government. This is a really exciting time.
It's a very exciting time. You know, one of the things that I was with last night at another innovator, we were talking about what does a foundation do that's parked with 10, 20, 30, sometimes billions of their own tokens that you just can't go liquidate. I mean, if you did, you've got a problem in the market. What about a potential solution, I said to him, being, why don't you open up an insurance fund and say, we will back the market with our token, and so you will pay us as your, let's say we're going to be acting as your insurance carrier, and you give us and we will give you in the event that this happens. So now you have someone buying 60% or 70% of what's left of their foundations, and there's no need for liquidation because now the price is rising. That it seems that there will be the next idea coming to this from the crypto scene.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting idea. The one I'm always thinking about is if you have one actuary, Bitcoin, smart contracts on the blockchain, you can actually, and a little artificial intelligence that catches the fraud. You can actually set up this very lean insurance company. And if you have a lean insurance company, first of all, you can beat out all those other insurance companies who keep advertising to you on TV. But what's really even more interesting is that governments, I sort of broke this down, governments are kind of big insurance companies. There's healthcare insurance and workman's comp insurance and pensions and whatever, those are all insurance. Well, that could all be done on the blockchain. And so you could, in effect, have governments competing with each other with these insurance programs. So we don't have to get our healthcare insurance from the same place it's delivered. The healthcare is delivered. We don't have to have our pension doesn't have to be tied to some geographic border. It can be open and across border and
That's
wherever.
fascinating.
And governments then have to start thinking, how do I compete for these people?
Which, as they should be doing.
You bet. I mean, the rest of us do.
Yeah, and I would say that, and this is me saying it, not Mr. Tim Draper, but this seems to be that the cartels of the world, the big banking conglomerates, did not give a beep about charging massive percentage points on a transaction, and now all of a sudden they're coming up with solutions and lowering their fees. So it seems that people like you, Mr. Draper, are the one who's really saving, you know, Susie in Mexico or Tom in Ohio or Bill in all over the world, that it was because of innovators like you that are forcing them to change.
Well, it is fun to see the banks, how they are responding. And they're kind of going through the 7 levels of grief. At first they go, it's not here. They deny there is something that is better than the dollar. And then they kind of go, oh boy, they keep coming. And then they line up against it and they say, okay, well, we're just not going to let it in. And so all the banks kind of line up, and then a few of them break rank or kind of go, well, you know, this really is better. Maybe we should use it to provide better service to our customers. And those ones are going to be the ones who are around 40 years from now. The ones that won't break rank are the ones who are destined to fall from grace.
Fall from grace.
And I think I think it's true of governments too. The governments that are accepting of Bitcoin, like the Japanese government said, Bitcoin's now a national currency, along with the yen. As soon as they said that, all the entrepreneurs went, whoa, maybe we should go to Japan. this is really cool. And China went, no Bitcoin. And then, of course, they went through their levels of grief, and now they're kind of going, yeah, well, I
And
guess
now they
we
find
need
on
it.
the forgery side, companies like VeChain that are making a difference.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, what's great about these cryptocurrencies is, people go, well, they were all used for all these criminals. Well, it turns out, if you want to be a criminal, you should use cash.
Yeah, this is too trackable.
Because all of this is right on the blockchain. If you do something, sure, maybe you get a Bitcoin payment in your Bitcoin account, but now all the U.S. Marshal's Office is watching that account. And as soon as that moves, they move on you. And you're kind of out of luck because it's right there.
And are they watching all the time now?
Oh, absolutely.
Tracking everything.
Oh, absolutely. I would assume so. It's much easier than tracking dollar bills.
So they now have the tools to be able to tap in and download all that data and watch it.
I would assume so.
So let's take you back to
kind
the
of
early days.
assume
So
that.
now we know where Tim is today.
Mm-hmm.
But before you became this, Mr. Draper, what was your first job?
First jobs were things I did on my own. I mowed lawns and painted trailers, and I did a bunch of sort of odds and ends for my family and for my relatives. Then I I picked a bunch of apples and sold them on the street.
Really? Where was this? Where'd you live?
This was in the Silicon Valley, not far from where I live today, but it used to be a bunch of groves here. It didn't
no one
used to
lived
be.
there.
It didn't used to
This
be
was
like
before it
what
was
this
Silicon
is.
Valley.
Right. And I remember, selling them, and my friends would come and go, and they'd drop in, and they go, "Oh, what are you doing?" "Oh, I'm selling apples." And then they'd come and they go.
An apple salesman.
And then my
Did you sell applesauce as
my
well?
friend's mother, I should have. My friend's mother came and said, and it was near the end of the season, and she said, "Well, so how much have you made?" And I said, $8. And she said, "Let me see that." She takes the $8. She hands $1 to each of the friends who had ever been by and looked, and then hands me $1 and takes $2 away from me. And I thought,
What is this?
I did all this. I did it myself.
Yeah.
Maybe I could give a dime to a couple of these guys, but I did it all myself. And I thought, that was socialism. That was my first experience with socialism. I do not like socialism.
My 6-year-old tells me all the time, sharing is caring. I go,
Right. And she took the two,
who's
which is just
indoctrinating
like
you?
a socialist government
Yeah,
does.
that's right.
They take the money away, and then they just don't
So
explain
you learned
why.
early on that hard work pays off.
Yeah.
I mean, but
Well,
the
it
hard
can.
work will pay off.
It would have
There are
if I
certain
hadn't had her
certain
there.
environments.
Yeah. And then I had a lot of interesting jobs. I worked on an oil rig in Venezuela. I worked, I did some electrical engineering design work at CUME. My first official job was, I got paid below minimum wage, at a company where I counted integrated circuits. These little chips that, I counted them for a company. And I remember keeping track, and I had counted 100,000 integrated circuits during the course of the summer. And so I've had a lot of interesting experience. And then I worked at Hewlett-Packard. And while I was at Hewlett-Packard, I created a game called Stanford the Game, which was kind of fun. And then I went, after business school, I went to work at Alex Brown, the investment bank, for about a year. And then I said, I'm off. And I started to do my own thing. And I raised a bunch of money from the Small Business Administration, and that's how I got going.
I mean, you're self-made. This is
not really. My dad was a venture capitalist. My grandfather was a venture capitalist. So it's like
it was in your
blood. Sort of the last thing I wanted to do, but I ended up doing it.
But you still had to go out and make it happen.
Oh yeah.
You had to go make it happen.
Oh yeah.
You had to
this stuff.
Create the activity, and you had to work and learn. So where do you find the fuel? Where is the fuel for you? Who pushes you? How do you keep going?
I get to see what's happened because of what I've been able to do, and I realized that I've got to keep doing this. This is really, as soon as I realize how important it is, I say, wow, this is something that I've got to keep doing, because I'm spreading the good word of entrepreneurship and venture capital around the world. But also we had a hand in, we helped start Hotmail, and then I came up with a little message at the bottom that says, it was supposed to say, P.S. I love you, get your free email at Hotmail, but it just said, get your free email at Hotmail, because the founders didn't like the P.S. I love you. But it spread to around the world, and we all can communicate around the world for free because of that moment. And so I look and I went, wow, that really made a big impact. And we backed Skype. Same thing happened.
That's incredible.
And then Elon, my gosh, Elon starting both Tesla and SpaceX. Well, he didn't start Tesla, but he took over Tesla and made it work. The idea of first saving the planet and then potentially getting off the planet
let's get
as
out.
a
I think
hedge.
what he figured out was, it's a little bit more work than you think saving this planet.
It's also a lot more work getting off the planet,
I
too.
can't imagine.
I mean,
all the
finding a
technical
place
issues.
where you have to go,
So
figure out
will you
how
go to
to
outer
live.
space? Do you see
Yeah,
yourself
that's
taking a
my
trip?
plan. But I'm sort of going to wait until I'm about in my mid-80s, I think, before I travel to the moon. I think I'll go to the moon. I'm not sure I'd go to Mars yet, because 6 months. Ugh. 6 months.
6 month commitment. You could run it remotely, put up, get some screens put up. This is Tim Draper. Moon landing, launch 13. We're here. Draper Associates,
There's
moon
a
base.
big communications delay there.
I can see you putting up a big billboard,
I'd be
Draper.
saying, no, don't fund that, and they will have already funded
That's it. You're going to be
I'm
that
not sure
guy.
that's going to work.
Draper University has moon base. Where do you go from here, Tim?
Actually, it's probably more of the same, because the venture business gives me such incredible ability to drive change and make kind of great things happen. It's kind of one of the things that's helped me. Every time I fund a company, I kind of have it in my head, how is this great? How is this really great? How is the world going to be better because of this? And that tends to be a good investment criteria. Ends up being good.
And how many companies have you invested in over the course of your
Oh,
career?
probably 1,000.
That's a lot.
And about 35 have become unicorns. The rest are on their way or didn't quite
get
make
it.
it. About half of them die.
Half of them die.
Yeah.
And for yourself personally, what are your personal goals? All right, you've already made the money. It can't be more $1 more. I'm like, yeah, at some point, money's not going to. And building this, like, what are your personal goals? What do you want to be known as? What do you want your legacy to be?
Well, I think it has yet to come. I mean, I think I've still got a lot more fuel in this tank. So I think I'm not quite sure what that legacy is going to be, but it's probably from stuff I do now. Moving forward. Yeah.
That's remarkable. Well,
I mean, it's pretty great, though. Draper University, I do think
how did that happen,
thing is
by the way?
really.
I mean,
Draper
University.
You know,
you got a new university.
it came from.
That's pretty wild.
It came from a conversation I had with this broker, real estate broker, Kevin Delahanty. After the crash, the stock market crash, I thought, they spent so much to pull us out of this, we're going to have inflation. So I was wrong about that. I mean, there has been a little, but I was wrong about that. And but it made me go, I said, well, what should I buy? And he said, well, there's an old building here that's been boarded up for 8 years, and it was the old Ben Franklin Hotel, and maybe you want to do something with it. And then I was talking with my son, and he came up with the idea of a school, and I thought, well, school, I've always kind of wanted to try that, to build a school. And so, and then I thought, well, the only school I could possibly create is a school for entrepreneurs, because otherwise I don't know very much. And so when I did it, I thought, well, wait, what are entrepreneurs? Well, they're taking long odds at extraordinary outcomes. So they're heroes. And so I thought, Draper University of Heroes. And I didn't want to take entrepreneurs off their game for more than about 5 or 6 weeks. I know universities usually 4 years. But I thought, I really only want to get them fired up for about 6 weeks, and then I want them to go and blossom and do whatever it is that they do. And so we have a program that's about 5 weeks that's hero training, and then we have a program called Go. And there's hero training is just 5 weeks of like, you do all these crazy things and you get good at teamwork, you get good at leadership, you sort of understand how hard it is to be an entrepreneur, but you're thrown into uncomfortable situations. We have survival with Navy SEALs and Special Forces. We have,
that sounds fun.
We have. I tell them they've got 24 hours to get a job offer on paper and come back.
That's cool. This is something you really enjoy too.
Oh yeah.
It's fun.
It's fun. Yeah, and that's so that ends up being about 15% of my time.
15% of your time. So how do you decide where your time goes?
I just have to be watchful and see how impactful each meeting is, each moment is. I think that's a big part of it.
How many emails over the course of a day or a week does Tim Draper
receive?
receive?
What's really funny is I used to use the phone all the time, and then I figured out that I could send 200 emails in the time I could make 30 phone calls. And I thought, well, that's more powerful. So that's what I do. And texting takes more time because it's all this back and forth, back and forth, and back and forth. So I don't do that.
You don't do texting.
Not.
You're an email guy.
Yeah, and because email is like, get it done, get the message across, make it clear, and then more business can get done. So, but the amount that we get 20,000 business plans a year.
Holy cow,
here,
20,000.
and we do about 20 of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And then the 20 you received, have there ever been one where you're like, wow, like that was on brilliance level, or were those the unicorns?
Yeah, there have been a bunch that are on brilliance level that didn't work out.
And does that drive you crazy? You're like, why?
Yeah,
Every reason to succeed.
It's usually people oriented, like the founders blow up, or the company doesn't manage their money well, or they get too much funding from somebody else. I never give them too much funding.
No, you
give
make
them
them
just a little less than
enough.
what they asked for. Yeah.
And what is it that you look for in a leader? What is your definition?
Well, it's two things. One is there's this internal passion that isn't always like cheerleading passion. It's like, I've got to get this thing done. And then it's the best leaders are sort of steady on the tiller as they go through the tempest. It's a little like, dealing with teenagers as a father. Their emotions will go high and low and high and low, and you'll never be able to rise as high or fall as low.
My kids are young, don't tell me this.
Oh, sorry about that. Anyway, here's
my future.
Here's your future. Steady on the tiller. Just go through the tempest, steady on the tiller, because so many things are going to happen to you as an entrepreneur. You're going to be hit with all sorts of setbacks and all sorts of things that don't work, and people issues and all sorts of customers that drop off. All these things are going to happen to you, and you've just got to keep the mission. You got to keep to the mission and go forward and say, we're getting there. It's just a matter. We had a little setback. It's going to take a little longer. Let's keep going. Those are and have been the best entrepreneurs, and the ones who have enough personal confidence so that they they kind of attract people to their mission. People kind of go, hey, I want to join that mission because that guy is so charismatic, or he has that thing, and he's so into it. And I want to be into something too.
And were people always drawn to you? Was there always this connection where you led and people came up behind? I mean, was this something that always been a part?
I often lead and nobody comes behind.
They don't want to come with you, huh?
But yeah, sometimes they do come. And when they do, it's usually a great adventure. One of my best friends, actually my best friend, other than my wife.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Put that on
he says, yeah, you go on an adventure with Tim, you're lucky if you're back in 3 days.
Uh-oh,
That's his
that's it,
thing.
huh?
It's like, what are we doing? Why are we going
Where's
this
he
way?
going?
What are we doing?
So
Seriously?
you just get these ideas like, I just got to go do it.
Got to do it.
I got to figure out where this is going.
Absolutely, it's part of the fun. It's actually part of life's fun.
Sure.
Is the great adventure that you have, and then trying things and sort of going, huh, well that didn't work. Hey, let's try something else. Let's try this. Oh, hey, this is working. The thing I need to train myself to do is when it's working, just pile on, just go, go, go. Because when it's working, I kind of go, oh, well, that's working, so I don't need to, let me go focus on something else. And that I've got to change my mindset, because if I've got a super great winner going, I should just be, piling it on and all in. So I've done that with my most recent fund. I've created a discipline for how I'm going to do that.
You seem to create more work for yourself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, what else am I going to do?
It's like, wait a second. My uncle, a number of years ago, he's a cardiologist, and I was complaining about time. And he goes, "Dus, I got 5 kids. I'm the chief of cardiology, and I've never run out of a minute to do the things I really want to do."
Oh, that's great.
And I think that's fascinating. So here's a cardiologist saying, I've never run out of a minute. And you seem to keep finding the minute to do the things you really want to do.
Well, there's so many. I mean, here you got a new day. What are you going to do? You got a lot to do. There are plenty of things to do. I find that the probably may have been Nike's "Just Do It" or whatever, but it's like, just do it.
Just do it.
See
Pull
what
the trigger.
happens.
Just do it.
See what happens. And if it doesn't go well, you kind of go, oh, okay, that was a learning experience.
Thank you for sharing your story with us, Mr. Draper.
Terrific. Thanks for
Appreciate
having
it.
me on
Thank
the
you, sir.
show.
Thank you, sir. That's fantastic. That was really good.
It was fun. You brought it out in